introduction, Paul. We're going to be looking at two historic Oak Park homes, the Garland Edmund homes, which was constructed around 1850, and the Rollin Furbeck house, constructed about 1898. We're going to follow by a question and answer. If you have any questions, just post them in the comments section. You don't need to wait until the end of the presentation. You can post them as you go along, and we'll address them at the end. The Garland Edmonds house, circa 1850, is one of the oldest homes in Oak Park. The dining room is circa 1890, an early addition by owner Abraham Edmonds. Edmonds was a woodworker and was responsible for the woodwork at nearby Pleasant Home and at Marshall Field's Walnut Room. This home is in the Ridgeland Oak Park Historic District. Michael and Laura Thompson purchased the Garland Edmonds home in 2000 and moved in a year later. The restoration renovation work has touched every inch of the home, including window restoration, roofing, a kitchen addition, porch renovation, electrical and mechanical systems, and exterior wood and stucco. The Rollin Furbeck house, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, was built in 1898 as a gift from Furbeck's father, Warren. It is a local landmark in the Frank Lloyd Wright School of Architecture Historic District. Over a 20-year span, Tom and Deb Abrahamson have conducted numerous renovation and restoration projects on the home, all of which stayed true to the home's architectural and historic integrity. Work on the home has included a structural restoration of the garage, which was originally a stable, paint stripping of woodwork, the reconfiguration of the second floor to create a master bedroom suite, replacement of non-original radiator heating for ducted central heating and air conditioning, basement waterproofing, decks and porches, prairie garden, and the creation of a kitchen family room within the confines of the original footprint of the home. That project, featured in HGTV's New Spaces, will be the focus of Tom's presentation. So we'll start with Laura's presentation of the Garland Edmonds home. Go ahead, Laura.
Good morning. As Chris said, ours is a very old house. And when we bought it, it needed a lot of love and a lot of money. In fact, our inspector said, "You know what you're getting into here?" But we loved the bones of the house and we loved the neighborhood. So we set out to get a plan for the house. And this is so important, and my number one recommendation is have a plan. Your plan might be years long and cover the whole house, garage, maybe even the yard. It might include everything, as ours did, and probably Tom and Deb's did as well, from electrical and plumbing to foundation and roof to painting and new appliances. Even if you're able to do a whole house renovation all at once, HGTV style, you'll still need a plan for all of the work that needs to be done. Our plan for this house in Oak Park was a 10-year plan, but it turned out that it took us nearly 17 years to complete all of the work. We needed to do pretty much everything. I've also done the whole house at once renovations, but most of the time, house renovation plans will cover many years. So how do you get a plan? I would say start with your inspection. The inspection will show what needs to be done. Think about then what you'd like to get done, even including simple things like painting or redoing the driveway. Try to find a local contractor and a local architect who understands preservation if yours is an old house. We attended Right Plus in Oak Park and we looked at local newspapers to see who had done other homes. We drove around the neighborhood to see contractor signs at homes comparable to ours. And we asked around the neighborhood for strong recommendations, and we found a great contractor. Your home also might have a history, so check with your local history organization. They can probably show you renovations and restorations over time. This is particularly helpful if you are looking at a restoration and not a renovation and want to see how your house looked originally. There's a program on this at 10:30 today. Your plan will probably look much like a menu. You'll see all of the work that needs to be done over time, and you can pick and choose what you want to do. Having a strong plan will also help you manage and review budget costs. Your plan is going to have priorities, and most of the time, it's the outside of the house first. You're going to have roofing, foundation, windows. It will probably not be painting the outside of the house. Cosmetic upgrades, which are generally the most fun, are usually last in a plan. You don't want to paint the living room and then have the roof leak into it. And although when we bought this house, we had babies, so we did a little bit of interior cosmetic work of painting and some flooring before we moved in, just so it was a little bit more livable, and we didn't have to do that inside work with 2 little ones. So when you have priorities on your plan, there's still maybe things that happen that need to move up in your list that you didn't anticipate. We knew we wanted to renovate, restore our front porch, but we didn't have it in the plan until much later, but we realized it was pulling off the front of the house. So we had to move that higher up in our foundation as well as foundation work for that job. We also had to wait to do our kitchen. It was such a massive project and very expensive. So we had to save and plan for it. It was nearly 12 years into our plan before we did our kitchen. People always wondered why we hadn't done any painting on the exterior of the house as well, but we really wanted to wait until everything was complete. Then as you're working through your plan, here are a few pointers. Sometimes you'll have to do mechanical upgrades before you can complete a renovation or a restoration, such as upgrading your electrical service or your plumbing. We did our electrical upgrades bit by bit through the house, but we really should have done a whole house rewire early on. Our electrician said he was surprised that our house hadn't burned down. Ask your contractor for a payout schedule or costs for the planned stages on your major plan so that you can anticipate these costs and save for them. Once we did get into our kitchen renovation, which was the biggest project we had done, we also had a full breakout of all of the costs and general categories throughout that restoration and renovation. Another tip is it's best to work with a contractor and let them bring in the subs because of timing and cost savings. It might seem like you can save money by managing the subs yourself, but it's a lot more work and your contractor will make the job run more smoothly for you. If you have a historic home, please remember that you're a steward. Be sensitive in your restorations, but also you can be realistic for modern living and budget constraints. Our long-term plan suggested removing all of the 1910 stucco on our 1850s house, and we considered it. But it was a very big and very expensive project that we didn't feel needed to be done. A couple of other really important things when you're doing a major plan for renovation and restoration is to be very clear to your contractor who will be the ultimate decision maker. It's very hard to have couples contradicting each other on these decisions. And speaking of decisions, once you begin planning for your projects and really get into the drawings and hiring of your subcontractors, don't change your mind if you can help it. Our contractor always said, we can do anything, but there is a cost. So remember the old adage, construction is always more time and more money than you have planned. It is so true. So even with your plan, always have extra time built in and understand that it's a lot of money. We are so pleased that we took this old house and made it modern for our family. We may not get back all of the money investment we put in, but it has more than made up for it in the pleasure we have of living in such a wonderful historic home. Thank you.
Well, for the second part, Tom, you can begin.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Boy, I wish I had seen your presentation when I started doing our project. And you ended talking a bit about money, and sometimes some folks have said, you know, I really like your renovation. You've really stayed true to the historic character of the home. And it occurred to me that the more you spend, the easier it is to stay true to the historic character of the home. But I'm going to share some thoughts about this that maybe can help you save some money and also have maybe a little more fun with project than you may think going into it. So as Chris had mentioned, we wanted to have a modern living type of a kitchen family room. And if you, next, Chris, you're going to move my slides for me. The Roland Furbeck house, which is actually an 1897 built, had a number of insensitive additions and subtractions over the years. When on the left, this is not how we bought it, but it does show the prior owners had put some very great care and bucks into restoring the original wall. If you look on the right side, that gave you Frank Lloyd Wright's signature path of discovery to get into the house. And also really exposed that picture window, which is supposed to be the first use of a picture window in a residence. So on the right is the current state of the home. And one of the insensitive additions was, and I'll tell you a little more later, for a period of time, about 20 years, the home served as a bordello. You don't hear much about that in the stories, the official stories of the house. Next. So when we bought the house, there were in the back, there were two small rooms that had a kitchen and then a wall between them with a pass-through and a walkway through, and then a small family room type area. And you can see to the right of that, there was a basement stairs, which may have been the original stairs. We're not sure because there are no blueprints of this house, unfortunately. There was then a screen porch, and above that, a passageway to a deck, and then another set of stairs to the basement on the outside. And then the far left, upper left, there was a coat closet. So the thing is that all of what you see there was covered by one single hip roof. Next, please. The look and feel of the kitchen and the family room, it wasn't exactly what we wanted. And they were like two separate rooms. And if you look on the left photo, the window is original, and the left edge of that window is the basement wall. On the other side of that wall is the basement stairs. And so if you switch to the next, you can see what we're able to do in the shaded out areas is to create a new kitchen family room space. It's decent size. It's about 20 by 20 feet in all. And we incorporated the screen porch. The basement stairs were moved to the left, upper left, if you see where there was a closet. Then we enclosed the outside basement stairs, closed that up, and the deck, and we came up with this kitchen family room. And there was a little bonus, which is up at the top, which is the dining room wet bar. The way it was designed, we actually had a cavity there of a couple of feet. So on the other side, we were able to make a wet bar in the dining room. Next, please. And here is the finished product. It looks exactly the same today as it did about 18 years ago when we did this renovation. And you can see that there's a nice seating area on the right. There's a mudroom to the back door, which is in your upper left. And an island that seats 6 people comfortably with a vegetable sink. And then at the next slide, you can see another view looking at the entrance to the kitchen from the rest of the house. And I show this one to point out that the window on the right there, the original window, remember, you can now see that it's open up to the rest of the room, and where that grandfather clock is on the other side is a coat closet and a little bit of a mud room. Next, please. And then another view where you can see the cooking area of the kitchen and the hanging lights above the island. You'll see a little bit more of those later. And then to the left, you see the entrance into the room. There's actually 2 doors into that room that we can close off and give some privacy. And it also mimics other doors in the house. Next, please. And then this is that bonus wet bar on the other side on the left there of the picture. Next, please. So I have a couple tips. One is that I think a way to make a renovation seem like it's always been there is to really look around for little cues and little features that, or big features that define the rest of the house and bring them in to your design. And then scour the internet and restoration stores like Reuse Depot, which is amazing for finding period doors and fixtures and all kinds of stuff. That helps a lot. That will also save you a ton of money. It's usually less expensive to buy something from a place like that than to buy it new and to have it made for you. Next, please. So for example, there are some exterior doors, like this was from the dining room to the porte cochere, and to the right are the kitchen doors that we mimicked, for the most part the same. Next. On the right is the original window framing of that window I pointed out in the family room area, and you can see the moldings are not Home Depot available. It has an upper and lower bead. It required a rather expensive router blade to be made. On the left, you can see the brand new windows and the framing, but we've used quarter sawn oak and, to the most precise level possible, matched that molding throughout. And we also did it all around the kitchen cabinets. Next. And you have to get knobs for your cabinetry and drawers, and there are some knobs like the one on the left around the house. So we were able to find the ones on the right. Next. Here's another tip. Every home has a big old TV somewhere above a fireplace, it seems, in a family room, in a living room. We're not too crazy about that. So the next slide shows that with a little bit of creativity in our cabinetry, we were able to put a nice big TV in that space and close it off when we're not watching it. Much, much nicer feel. Next, please. And I found in working with architects and contractors, there is a continuum from wild and crazy, ideas and styles to absolute purist approach to everything. We think that there's a way to be creative and also stay true to the architecture of the home. And one way we did it, next, in addition to using cherry cabinetry, and I really like what Laura did with bringing in mid-century into her kitchen, our house did not have a single original light fixture. So we started pulling in light fixtures from designs from other iconic Frank Lloyd Wright homes. Like the one in the middle is an iconic fixture you'll find in Fallingwater. We bought that fixture online from the museum store of Fallingwater. Wasn't that expensive. And some others, like the one above it, which is in the kitchen, and that is from the Dana Thomas house. We had that made. We had it made at Tiffany Art Glass in Forest Park. Did an amazing job. And again, it wasn't really that much more expensive than buying it from a good lighting supplier. Next, please. I mentioned that our house was a bordello at one point. And in the basement where the women did their work, it was all cut up into little rooms and this and that. So we renovated that, but we did maintain a little touch of history by keeping some of that wallpaper of the mermaid and sailor and framing it on the wall in situ. And then you can see another example of tile work that we bought from Motawi, which is around that same period, beautiful tiles, handmade in Michigan. Next. So just two quick tips to finish up. One is exactly what Laura was saying. You can't have it all, but maybe not all at once. And that planning really does help. And I wouldn't feel tremendous pressure to do everything all at once. And the next and last is that we were able to qualify for an 8-year tax freeze. And that is through the state of Illinois. Check into it. If you're in one of Oak Park's 3 historic districts and you put about 25% of the cost of the home into renovation, you will qualify. So check that out and have a great time renovating your house. And I will now turn back over to Chris.
Okay, now for a question, the first question for Tom, how did their cabinetry work, particularly the TV cabinet?
You just pull out the sides and it's like an accordion fold, and then it just closes off the space. So it's 2 feet deep and all the stuff is behind it.
Laura, boy, I should know the answer to this. How much square footage did you add on to the house?
Oh my, I don't even know. We added a basement room, which is it was a playroom. Now it's an office space. We added a family room off of the kitchen. The kitchen footprint stayed the same. We took out a staircase, and then we added a bedroom on the second levels. And then we added decking off the back. So it was quite a bit of space. I don't know exactly how many square feet.
And if anybody has any other questions, they can type them into the comments. Until we get another question, I'd like to hear from Laura. What is something you wish you had known going into the work? What that you think specifically might have saved you time or money?
I think, I went back and we did have this plan, a 10-year plan. And we realized that early on we had hired a cheaper contractor. So we were trying to save some money, and we looked at a cheaper contractor to do one of our major projects, which was building our garage, which is a 2-story, 3-bay coach house. And it was a mistake. So we really should have stuck with, tried not to hire a cheap contractor. We should have stuck with the original, which we did for the rest of our projects.
And Tom, there's a question for you, and I know there's going to be a presentation on this later today, but how did you find out about the tax freeze?
You are not going to get a proactive promotion from the state of Illinois about this. We heard about it through the grapevine. A neighbor had done it, and then we checked into it. It was not super hard to apply for, but yes, you kind of have to find out on your own.
Yeah, and as I said, there's going to be a presentation later with Susan Benjamin about this subject, so I'm sure folks will be interested in hearing. And then Tom, could you explain a little bit more about what your prairie garden entails?
Well, that might be a bit of a marketing hype, but we had actually, until about 1 year ago, we had some nice features, and plantings and so on. But we actually worked with Moss in Forest Park, and she has worked with some of the homes and did an amazing job of coming up with certain types of trees and things that you will see, period, and related to Wright's work. So I can't tell you the species, what have you, but our house is at 515 Fair Oaks in Oak Park. Feel free to come and look at the front yard, for example, and you get a full feel for that.
Does anybody know how the edges of the trim were fashioned before routers? I think for both of these homes, there were machines that did this work, but I assume it was done by hand before.
Wow.
I think in our house, Chris, it's in many layers. You can see layer upon layer of smaller pieces of wood on some of the older moldings.
And then Laura, you spoke a little bit about how you drove around Oak Park, looked at contractor signs, and also went to Wright Plus to see, who had worked on the homes. Tom, could you talk a little bit about how you found the right people, to work on your house?
Well, we had done a few other renovations, and there's an architect, his name is Daryl Drake, out of Glen Ellen, who I'd heard about some 30 years ago through some friends, and he was doing some zany renovation work up in Lakeview and Uptown, and we just had a project, and we liked him, and he wouldn't have been considered a restoration architect for that period, but he had a nice take on, he was true to the form, but he also had some creative ideas that we liked. And so it was really a referral, but also it was something unusual in the sense that he wasn't doing restoration of historic homes at the time, but he came in with certain ideas that were modern and then even a little bit fashion forward, if you would, that we liked. So it's a good working relationship there.
And Laura, you know, your home has a lot of beautiful original tile and woodwork. Did any of that need restoration work after you moved in?
We were very lucky in this house that the woodwork did not need a lot of restoration, surprisingly, because there was a period of time when the Park District owned this house and used it for many different offices. So you might have thought that it would have been torn out or painted. We had a picture rail in the living room that was painted that we needed to strip. And that was about all. All the woodwork just needed to be cleaned up.
And Tom, what was your experience with woodwork?
Well, a lot of it was painted and we did a lot of stripping. Um, the quarter sawn oak is a lot more expensive than you know, the modern oak that you'll get that has a real big grain. And just about everywhere we could, we use quarter sawn because that really big, it makes a big difference there. Otherwise, the house has 12-inch high base moldings between the floor and the wall, and some tricky stuff above and below the boards. So we stayed true to that too, when it would have been real easy to do a standard size or maybe 6-inch, that sort of thing. So one thing that we did is actually use maple on the floor of the kitchen, just because it brightened it up and it felt good, and it seems to be just okay. You don't have to do everything oak everywhere.
And both of the homes are in historic districts, so you've both probably, you know, I know Tom, you sat on the commission, but you've both dealt with the commission. But Tom, your home is a landmark, and I know that Susie will be talking about landmarking later on today. But what was your experience in landmarking your property?
I had a misperception that you can't do anything to a home in the historic district or with landmark status. It's no different than any other home that is considered to be a contributing structure in Oak Park, and there are, I think, about 3,000 of them. Essentially, anything you see from the street is something that it would require approval. And it was a really great experience, actually. I went for advice first, and then I presented plans and got approval. We were not planning on doing anything nutty, so everyone was, you know, very pleased with what we chose.
And one more, is there, and let's start with Laura, is there a specific pitfall that you would recommend a homeowner try to avoid on their project?
One of the things is changing your mind. I think I've heard that recently from some people that were doing some renovations and restorations, and they got really deep into it and then changed their mind. They wanted something larger or added a room, and it really does kind of throw off the plan. So I think it's important to try to get all of your research done and come up with something. You're going to end up saving time and money.
Okay, and then a final comment from Tom on that subject.
You know, I think I really appreciated Laura's presentation about, you know, those planning ahead kinds of things. No, I can't really think of anything that we need to add in that regard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, thank you both for the presentation.